Okay, so I'm Joana Breidenbach. I am a social entrepreneur and author, and for the purpose of the Hearth Summit, I am one of the co-organizers of the Hearth Summit Berlin.
Hi, my name is Aaron Pereira. I am with the Wellbeing Project. I run the Wellbeing Project for the purposes of the Berlin Hearth Summit. I'm a big fan of Joana and a very big fan of Lukas. And so very glad to be here as a cheerleader.
Hi, I'm Lukas Harlan. I'm very happy to be with you here. And I'm the managing director from the betterplace lab, and I'm, how you want to call it, kind of a midwife for connection and development of projects and ideas into that world to create it.
Great. Maybe we can talk a bit about our joint collaboration, because the aim that we're also here all together is because we just birthed the Hearth Summit, the regional Hearth Summit Berlin, as part of the global Hearth Summit community that is derived from the Wellbeing Project, as far as I understand. Could you maybe give like a short summary of perhaps the genesis of the Hearth Summit globally, and then we could get into the genesis of the Hearth Summit Berlin?
Sure. What I would say is that this is work that we've all been cultivating for a very long time. Joana, for example, we've been working together since 2015, and there's a community of us that have really been exploring this question of inner well-being and social change. How do these things come together, all the different things that are involved in that. And in working together over a number of years, finally, it really made sense to bring together everyone. And so we hosted this really big summit in 2022. And then what was incredible was that there were members of our community who started wanting to organize or even organizing things in their own countries. And so I think it speaks to this desire, this hunger to really come together around this question, to look at many of the big things that we're dealing with in the world through this perspective, and to try and really look at how we both nourish ourselves and how we give life to a new future through connecting inner well-being and social change, to really keep exploring that axis. And so for us, what's been incredible is that it's been collective the entire way through. And so one of the places that we were really excited about this happening is in Berlin, in Germany. There's been such incredible reflection around this question. Joana and Lukas have both been thinking about this, and Joana for a long time. I think there are 2 books, at least 2 books. And so for us, it just was very, very natural. And of course, being here in Berlin, there were particular things that could be explored that will be unique, as is everywhere else. So it all adds to the collective tapestry that's being woven by all of us.
Thank you.
You want me to continue?
Yes,
please.
Yes.
So I think I was inspired to co-create together with Lukas and the team of the Better Place Lab and some other friends of mine this Hearth Summit Berlin, because it felt, for me personally, my connection to the Wellbeing Project had really enabled me to connect my inner work and my inner well-being with social change, something which I hadn't dared to bring together really before, because in the world of social change, very often inner work is considered to be like a self-optimization strategy or a bypassing of more collective topics. But I really felt that this motto of the Wellbeing Project, well-being leads to well-doing, just was so true for me. And so that was more my personal spark. And then the topic actually came about, the topic of fragmentation, when we decided what do we want to really focus on in Germany if we are creating a convention about the inner and the outer world and the connection between them. And fragmentation seemed like a really good topic, because we globally live in a very, very fragmented world built on historical phenomena like, imperialism, colonialism, slavery, in Germany, of course, also the Holocaust, where there's so much trauma, which then leads to a very fragmented society where many people and groups don't feel themselves and don't feel each other anymore, and thus need to exclude one another or need to exclude parts of themselves from their whole identity. And our hypothesis was that if we are looking at fragmentation, we are really tapping into a very meaningful but mostly unseen collective architecture, which is really at the roots, or maybe not the exact roots, but is much more upstream of the problems we are working in individually. So our hypothesis is that topics like climate change, poverty, violence against women, anti-democratic impulses, all of that really manifests because we as humans are not connected in a more holistic way with one another, but we exclude large parts of reality. And so to look at this was really a really interesting topic for us. We really wanted to learn something. We didn't create this summit by saying we know something and we want to share it with you, but we said we really want to create a field where there can be some collective learning for all of us about the soup, the often muddy and painful soup we are all sitting in.
And so the topic of fragmentation, and actually also the birth of the Hearth Summit, was intended to be it was always intended to be in February, and then it happened to coincide with the general election in Germany. So how would you describe, maybe if you want to describe this, or any of you who feels that they want to speak to this, how do you think it influenced also the Hearth Summit, the process of the Hearth Summit? How do you reflect on this?
I thought it was really great that the German government decided to cooperate and organize the election around the summit. That's organizing.
Yes. And it is all planned and designed, of course.
Such great collaboration.
Yes, of course. I mean, we assumed that it will be like this. Maybe one step back, because I think that Aaron and Joana have been connected, and the purpose of the well-being project to bring that like inner development and inner well-being together with the social work and creating a society. And the issue you were talking about, Joana, right now is actually like pieces came together in a wonderful way, because from the Better Place Lab perspective, the Better Place Lab is trying to support organizations to be more strong. The Better Place Lab is a kind of an organization which is trying to find out, to research about the field of social society, and how pieces belong together, how they are systemically connected, and also like what makes the individual organizations stronger, and how can they be in a collaborative sense stronger together. And also with your inspiration, Joana, about like bringing inner work and like structural topics together, we developed a kind of a strategy to bring also in the field of the civil society these pieces together. And to bring it into a Hearth Summit was actually the perfect move to start building a community and opening up the space for an experience around that. And we connected that with the current situation in our country, Germany. As you said, the elections were right in place a couple of days before we made the summit, although we planned it 1.5 years ago. And it became more real and more actual as we ever expected. And that's why we were somehow on the right path, so to say, to open up space to make visible and feelable like what is in society, to bring that also into the work of social work and civil society work and organizations, to like bring that also in their strategies, because we believe it will not change maybe or make like development strong if we only work on the structure and if we don't include the inner part of ourselves as human beings and the way we are connected together or not. And so we try to do that, and now it came up what we have experienced the last 2.5 days.
Yeah, and I think for me personally, I mean, the way how I understand the summit, and I think we all do, is very much that we are not talking about a topic, but that we are really exploring our own reality in that topic. And so for me, I really used my own fragmentation and my own worries, despair, whatever, these very emotional qualities of the last few weeks, especially since the Munich Security Conference, where it became apparent that really the transatlantic alliance is going to just dissolve. Plus then the elections, so that was a real felt sense I could tap into during the summit, from which I was experiencing it. So it was not so much just a mental thing which we did there, but I think each one of us connected to parts where we feel pain, fragmentation, exclusion, where we feel some urgency, and then to bring that into the summit in a way which is more embodied and more just whole than the usual talking heads when we have panels or other formats. I think there is an intimate connection for me.
I think the thing that for me really stands out, so Joana said this earlier, like this topic is one that's really important in many different places around the world, and especially you can see this like with Western democracies, but I also say we have the same issue, for example, in India. And I think for me there's a couple of like experiences within the context of the summit that have really spoken to me. One was this exploration of my own place in the two societies I live in, and I live in both France and I also live in India. And so being able to see the difference, like explore what that looks like, and part of it for me was very, very personal. Just to talk about like exploring the embodied experience as a person where, in the context in France, as it has become where the language sometimes can be push back more on people who are coming from different backgrounds. Part of the way that I realized, like I've taken this in, what I was reflecting on is, for example, when I go running in Paris on the street, even though it's a completely, and I know it's a thought that's completely irrational for the most part, I'll find myself like paying attention to the cars going by because I worry that someone who might be unhinged might actually like do something stupid with the car and like harmful, and so like that's present for me like as a thought. It's very, very strange to like really pay attention to what that actually looks like. And so part of what I appreciated in the summit was like inviting an exploration of like how we feel ourselves and holding these kinds of things with just curiosity. Like, so for me, I was invited to like, and I felt really curiosity about this. It's something I've reflected on before, and here I was just holding it and seeing that even as it coexists with many other realities. And so this leads me to my sort of like second point, like there's curiosity about myself, but then also I really appreciated that the container could hold many perspectives. And I think that's something that in the world that we want to live in, in the greatest aspiration of any democracy, like the idea is there's not one person or one group that's right. It's finding that space of coexistence. And so what I really appreciated was that exploration of holding many different fragments with curiosity, with spaciousness. And so that was a really extraordinary experience.
I have one thought about that because you describe it very beautifully, and it's actually a really main principle of what we have been trying at the summit, as you describe it, and also we are trying to do in other work, to build spaces with people and organizations, kind of an emergent space to open up the diversity and different perspectives and relations without bringing solutions in. And let it grow what is in this connection and what want to emerge out of that. And this has happened on the summit, so we did not want to bring kind of we have societal and political problems, how do we solve them? It's like it's there, how does it feel? And also maybe what you need to navigate and to feel well and powerful into that. And how you relate to that and what comes up if you do so. With the idea that we will, through this kind of connection, we will be more able to like hold it and not fragmented to it, but keep connection to it, and out of that develop next step for society without knowing maybe before what that will be. And that's a principle also in our work, to create this kind of spaces and to build a kind of, I would say, like in an old language, strategies, synergies, without telling you before what it will be.
I will say though, I think the word synergy went out of style in the 90s.
I mean, I also think that, so the image which we came up with was that in a world which is very, very diverse and where so far many perspectives are being excluded, we have the tendency to put every single perspective into one room. And if we want to come up with adequate solutions to the problems and the challenges we are facing, it is important that we can be in the same room together, that we don't trigger each other so much, that we don't tiptoe around each other because we are afraid of one another. So to really become aware of what is actually the space I am able to create individually, but also we as a group. How can we be together? Where are our boundaries where we feel we have to leave the room because it gets too intense? And also to acknowledge that that is the case, that it's very nice to talk about, oh, I can relate to different perspectives, I am multi-perspective, but actually we are not at all. And that also became apparent in the summit, that it is very difficult for us to stay related and not to cut the relation to somebody who has a very, very different perspective from me, or who just announces that he, for example, voted for a party which everybody in the room, or many people in the room, considers to be not a democratic party. And our idea was really to observe what is happening inside me and between us, and what are the group dynamics if we are confronted with something which we perceive to be outside of ourselves, maybe really threatening also for good reasons, because we have had our life experiences have told us that this is not safe. And so where am I able to enlarge where can I jump the empathy wall? That's how I like to phrase it in a way. But where do I also need to take care of myself and say, okay, this is not, I can't hold this, and I just need to leave the process. So I think we were confronted with, I think we could spend hours, days, weeks analyzing what actually happened in 48 hours, because there were so many diverse dynamics present. How we are with fragmentation, but also how we co-create it constantly.
Yeah, and actually, like what I was saying about like really appreciating the space, I think it's really important to say, like, this is an ongoing learning process, right? Like, this is not something that was perfect. The good thing about life is, like, we can't ever aim for perfect, but there's still a huge amount of learning, and I think learning at many different levels. I think one part of that is about, like, how spaces, plural, get hosted. I think another part of that is what you were talking about, like, it's okay, and people, every one of us should be empowered to opt out. I think it's also okay to recognize that there's not a need for just one space, but multiple spaces. And I think all of these things, like creating that kind of spaciousness, I think that's part of the learning journey, like how to explore hosting in a way where it needs a diversity of spaces, of approaches, of holding, in order to be able to hold that kind of diversity. And I think that it's not one answer. And of course, that's the extraordinary thing about diversity. It's never one answer. And so I think that's what makes it, like, in many ways, a very extraordinary invitation to continue to build a practice, to continue to build a way of convening. And so I love that there's a start here, and a very, very strong start that's meaningful, that's important at a time where the world is, like, confronted by these questions. But it's the beginning of an approach and work that a community can take on, right? And so I feel like I can feel this right now. I feel very, very excited about what was called. So that's, yeah, present for me.
And maybe one principle, what happened is we were trying to open up the space, and we saw, like, what is there and where are we connected or not, and how we are connected with each other. And the main thing was, like, how does it come from my person? So the very first step is, like, how am I related to this? And as long as I do that, and you mentioned that before, I can rely, how can I say, I don't judge, but I can like explore what that is and how that is, and how I can change that, and maybe stay connected without by being afraid or even unsure like what is the other. And there's one interesting book from one sustainable scientist, Ingolfur Olafsson. He says like the social ecological transformation has failed because everybody was like looking at his own problem and fighting against the problem and not including it. So there has not been the competency of relating to it by, you know, one changing or developing it and creating it. And that's why I bring that together with the individual perspective and experience, because it was always like talking about it and judging it instead of first of all finding out what is my relation to it, and maybe even how maybe I reproduce what is happening instead of like including that and inviting the relationship by developing something out of that. I hope it doesn't sound too theoretically.
Well, the way that the only thing I would say is I think it's like this is where like really giving people permission in the space really matters, and really holding a container. I think what Joana said as well, like for me it's great when people can recognize that they need to take space, and we all remain connected in some deeper way even when people choose to disconnect, right? Like there's just a way that things continue to work, a way that things continue to be. We're all still breathing the same air, still all living in the same place, and so at some deeper level that connection is actually present, and that choice is also okay. And I think sometimes we can struggle with the idea that somehow we've done something wrong, and I actually think it's a powerful choice when people can do that, and something to be really, really appreciated as well. I think we've gone down like a funny track with this. Yes. Probably like go back in a different direction.
Nonetheless, I appreciate the conversation, because I think this is also what what we've been experiencing the last 2 days, which is also really helpful to digest, perhaps in certain ways also for some of the participants. And I actually also wanted to ask you all individually, especially because you also emphasized the.
Trying to breathe.
I know, but if we open this, then the sound is.
For 1 second.
Then open it properly.
Yeah.
Can we stop?
Actually, we can. Yeah,
Oh, wow,
you have
cool
to
air.
edit.
Wow, like there's air coming in.
I know.
Nice.
I've got 3 more questions,
Oh, good.
and I just wanted to let you speak because I thought it was it's.
Nice to have the air.
Is my dog still alive?
I don't know when. Oh, she's like he's falling asleep. That's great.
Does the telephone box have an air condition?
Otherwise, was in English the title.
Okay, well there are many English books actually, but
Okay.
Okay.
Because you emphasized the learning space for each Hearth Summit, and I would like to know maybe if you can reflect on your own experience that you had during the Hearth Summit, and where was your learning edge?
I actually talked about my learning edge earlier. Like we're talking about like really grounding in my own personal experience. That was really fascinating in a number of different ways, because we come in a space where a number of different fragments have been named and were like there floating in the air being present, and allowed me to tune in to my own sense as well, and my relationality to a number of different things. And so that part about it becoming much more embodied for me, the way that I, in my body, experience things, the way that I relate to things, I thought was really exciting actually, and very deeply appreciated that. I also really loved the facilitators, the session that allowed that sort of that embodied process, because it was held from a space of curiosity, and I think that that's a really great gift. Like there's not a sense of, this is right or wrong. This is like, what are you bringing? What can you pay attention to within yourself? So I just thought that was fantastic.
I think my learning edge really is to find my own inner orientation in a place where there are no prefabricated answers, because when our approach was that we don't have a fixed summit format and that we have a timetable which is all pre-formulated, we did have that, but we were very conscious that we would probably change it after the first session already, because we really wanted to facilitate in an emergent way, meaning that we wanted to be with what we observed in the room, and then from there, really including the group, find the next possible step, and every group process is different. So it's not something where you can hold onto the railing and have the security to know what's going to happen in an hour. And that, for me, in my experience, demands that I am so much, if there is so little security on the outside, and if I have to read a field of 120, 30 people, where do I actually get the information from what is needed right now? Because there were so many needs in the room. And so many subgroups had different needs. So where do you actually, as a facilitator, go? And I would say, where do I go inside myself to sense, okay, so I think this is the stream I want to follow now. I want to rein in that question. I don't want to give space to that. I want to focus on that. And for me, that is really, really super difficult, because I see also the pressures in the room. I feel influenced by, God, I want to do justice to this group. I want to listen to this voice. Am I being perceived? I also want to be liked. Yeah? Am I being perceived as impolite or as a really horrible co-host if I move into this direction? So all of this interplay really demands that I have a really good sensing apparatus for my own intuition, as well as how do I read a room. And what we had as a, that was really nice, because we were quite a large facilitation team, so we could actually come together after every session and say, okay, what do you sense now? What would be the next appropriate step? But of course, we made many, mistakes, but there were many roads where we could have gone in a different direction. And so where actually that skill to really be in the present, and to find out what is required of us who lead this process. We need to show leadership. We can't just give the group the responsibility. I think that for me is super, super hot.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm even learning by listening to you. And when I looked to the process, first I thought, okay, I really gained again trust in processes. And I think that is so important to say, because I had this trust all the time, and that was super important for me to be orientated and clear, and to have the power to hold what is happening without giving too much direction into that. And second, I would say, we said at the beginning, like, we want to build a growing space, as we want to do also in the Better Place Lab, to build this place, this growing spaces. And people need that space. And the thing is, like, how can you unfold that people can connect to it? And a lot of people want to be heard and want to be seen, not in an egoistic way, but like, what is their relation and perspective to the world. And if you can open up the space that all this can come in, then the process can go. And that was so beautiful to see, and very exhausting also to hold, but beautiful to trust in it, and then also like to maybe only, which is not really an only, the responsibility to like everybody is like good to take it away and to bring in life and work and wherever you are.
Great, thank you. Maybe as a closing question, which was your most beautiful either encounter or moment of the Hearth Summit? Something that you really take with you as a sort of, nourishing moment, experience, encounter, facilitation session?
I have directly an idea. There's this great idea of the Wellbeing Project to include art into the design of the summits, which I really think so beautiful. And there are two moments which really bound everything together, which was there. And that was the moment when Naima Nazir did her poetry performance and brought voices of fragmentation together. And I could feel myself and in the room that really it touched people and brought it up what is there. And there was a second moment which was also very strong for me from the sound artist Nick Meehan. He designed a piece beforehand and he threw it away and he created a like 5 to 7 minutes piece in the moment around what was happening 2 hours later than what was planned and everything. And for me it was like, yes. Wow. He unfolds space by doing that.
Yeah, I'll just pick up on those. I echo those. Those were really both really, really beautiful and powerful moments. And I also really appreciated the choir and just seeing again like voices in different contexts. Like it really was something that gave a sense of how different voices in different places can actually create something also very, very beautiful and unexpected. And so that was also really breathtaking. And for me, the last thing that I'll add, so my two things that I'll add in, was where a sense of humor got woven in. And there were a couple of places where it did, and that the world can be, we can make the world very serious. And I think having a sense of humor allows us to also remember that there's a lot of really good things in the world and to hold both of these things. And we need that a lot in the world that we're living in. And so I really appreciated those moments where there was a sense of humor.
Nice, yeah, I like that. I like that, but I think my favorite moment was when, because at the end of the first day, I think people were really drained, and people were also very much, felt quite claustrophobic and quite desperate. How are we going to move on from here? And then when the next day started and we all moved into different sessions and lots of sessions to do with embodiment or just different kinds of formats, it really loosened up the space. It really created much more air in the room, much more oxygen. And I then loved the reflections of the people who just a few hours before had all been pretty drained, how they were able to share what had happened for them in these morning sessions, and there were so many reflections and insights where I felt, yes, this is exactly, what we wanted to achieve in a way. These are the voices we had wished for to be heard, not because we had preached them before, but because they actually came up out of the felt experience of the participants. And so for me, that rich kaleidoscopic image of different voices, which were very diverse also in the way what had touched them, that for me felt like, okay, things are coming together. And I think, Lukas, this is where you said you can trust the process, that, okay, so there is a new level of reality somehow emerging between us. And that was, for me, I think, one of the highlights.
Great. Thank you so much. Is there anything you feel you want to share and haven't shared yet? Anything you want to add?
Just as Joana was talking about, bringing oxygen into the space and air into the space, I was like, can we open the door?
Let's bring some humor in here.
Thank you very much.
I was like, are you trying to tell us open the door?
Brilliant. I'm really glad we had this conversation at the end of the summit finally together, and you were totally right. It was really like a nice, the reflection on what we lived through the past 2 days.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you.